Um, I'm passionate about it because that feeling of failure that I had, um, to this day, I get choked. I get choked up anyway, but I'm pretty passionate about things, and I don't want any franchisee to feel like I did.
I'm Catherine LeBlanc, and you're listening to my podcast host, where we help franchise systems bring their most important messages to life through podcasting. Each episode is a real conversation designed to sound like the kind of communication franchisees actually listen to: practical, human, and rooted in experience. Come on in. Hey guys, today I'm joined by Quinn Newhall. Quinn is the Chief Operating Officer at Clean Eatz. Hey Quinn, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to jump in with you today. You are a fairly new hire at the Clean Eatz team, and you come to the Clean Eatz team with an amazing resume of food and beverage experience. And so that's where I'd like to start, is kind of learning about you, learning about where you got your start and where you are now in your career, jumping into the position that you have today.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a storyteller, so you'll have to bear with me. But, I would say my restaurant experience started when I was a sophomore in high school and I got a job as a busboy at a restaurant concept called Bill Knapp's, which you can still get their wonderful fudge chocolate cake at Myers grocery stores. So that's my ad for them, I guess. And then I went to the Air Force Academy. And when I got out of the Air Force after 8 years, served as an officer, and I sure as heck didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I went to a headhunter conference up in Chicago, and at the end of the day, I had 4 offers, and 2 of them were in
Okay.
pharmaceuticals. One of them was with Kraft Foods, and the other one was with PepsiCo. And I was surprised by that one because when I went in the room, I was expecting, Pepsi, choice of a new generation. So I'm dating myself a lot there by that ad campaign. I opened the door expecting to see the Pepsi red, white, and blue logo, and I saw Colonel Sanders' face on the wall. And I go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must be in the wrong room." And they go, "Quinn?" And I go, "Yeah." And they're like, "Pepsi owns Kentucky Fried Chicken." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I
You're all
knew
right.
that." Yeah. So then the first thing I do, I sit down at the table and they say, "Would you like something to drink?" And what do I say? "I'll
No, you
take a
didn't.
Coke." Yeah, I
No, you
did.
didn't.
Yep. And right then I
Quinn.
go, "Okay, I should probably leave." And they go, "No, no, no, sit down." So from there, the interview went on. And by the end of the day, like I said, one of them was that I didn't know anything about pharmaceuticals. I sure as heck, other than Kraft, cheese, I didn't know what I wanted to do relative to as a brand manager.
Mhm.
And lo and behold, the KFC job was in Dayton, where I was stationed at the time, my last duty assignment. I think it was writing on the wall. And because
Yeah.
I was a busboy in high school, I was like, "Okay, I know what restaurants are about." So,
Right. Yeah.
um, that's what got me into it. Along the way it's really been a great journey. I would always say I think my first multi-unit job was my favorite time ever. Um, and it's probably because I was so naive and dumb. I just didn't know what I was supposed to do. I just did
Right.
what I thought I should do. Um, but from there, I spent several years there. Then I went to Cici's Pizza, worked my way up through the ranks to ultimately the senior vice president of operations there. Went to, Skyline Chili. I'm a Cincinnati kid, so if you are from there or know anything about Cincinnati, Skyline's a big deal. And I was the EVP of operations there. Then I went to Charlie's Cheesesteaks in Columbus and was the COO there. Then I thought it was time for me to just ride off into the sunset, and when my wife got me arts and crafts tools, I knew it was time for me to get back to work, and I was driving her crazy, and she said, "No, you're driving yourself crazy."
Yeah.
And so I went back out, and thank gosh I run into, Don and Yvonne, the founders here at Clean Eats,
Mhm.
and been with them now going on 8 months, soon to be 9, and it's been great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
letting me spew that out there.
No, I love it. Well, and I think that a lot of times when you are an executive and you join brands, you've done a great job of really getting out there and getting to know franchisees, and really you start with what are their concerns and where are they coming from. And so taking a step back and really outlining, I'm coming to this role with maybe more experience than you expected me to have. I think it's always good to start with, okay, well, what is your mindset coming into this role? And I know that during your journey, you also served as a franchisee. which is invaluable experience as you join a franchise brand or and work within a franchise brand. Tell me a little bit about how you became a franchisee and your experience during that period.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, um, I've always been a little warped on the, work side and commitment and, my work ethic, um, and so I was just in that mode. Well, this is when I was at Cici's Pizza, and we were driving, like, going crazy, crazy, and my son came to me and said, when he was 7, said, "Are you ever gonna see one of my games?" Um, Tore my heart out. And so something had to change. And so at that point, I became a franchisee with one store in Louisville, Texas, grew to three. And then along the way, ran into a great group of people that asked me to take over the franchise group in Colorado.
Mhm.
Loved Colorado, having gone to the Air Force Academy. And when that opportunity came up, man, I jumped at it.
Mhm.
And so for 16 years of my career, I was either a single store, three store, or 12 store operator
Yeah.
in a privately owned franchise piece for myself or as part of a group where I was the president for a franchise group out in Colorado. Um,
Yeah, I know from my experience, as a small business owner, when I talk to franchisees and get to know their stories, having a story of my own to relate to them around being that small business owner, being in those shoes, and understanding what it's like to look at, okay, what is my income coming in to pay my bills based on this business can be a really powerful way to connect with franchisees and put ourselves in the shoes of those franchisees. Seeing you interact with the franchisees and learning more about kind of how what your passions are when you're talking to franchisees, you can't help but notice that local store marketing is one of the drums that you beat on a regular basis, which as a marketer is music to my ears, right? Because when marketing and operations is working together, that's when real momentum and magic can happen. And you're such a steward for marketing and then specifically what it takes to market at the local level. And it's really based on the experiences that you've had as a franchisee. Tell me more about how vocal you are and why you're so passionate about local store marketing.
Yeah, I'd love to say that everything along the way in my franchise journey was just sunshine and roses. But when I opened my third restaurant, and again, nobody forced me to sign it, nobody, under duress, I did it. I have the responsibility. I take full responsibility. But I had a $1.7 million contingent liability between the build out and my guarantee on the lease. And everybody kept saying, "Oh, this is going to be a $25,000 a week restaurant." And I said, "Well, I hope so, because I have a $16,000 a week break even." Lo and behold, we opened the store and we were doing 11,000. Um,
That's a big gap.
Huge gap. I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking my great restaurant to pay
Mhm.
the bills in that store.
Mhm.
And I remember, feeling sorry for myself and really, hey, gonna give up, right? Just sitting there. And thankfully, my wife stuck a toe in my behind and said, "I've never known you to go down without a fight." And so off we went. And then through what I call preachers, teachers, and coaches, that is my tagline, slowly through the marketing, local store marketing, got that store up. And so we could hire a manager, and then things got even better and better. But I truly believe it was those experiences and the things I went through that brings me to where I am today and
Yeah.
why I'm on this, quite frankly, on this planet.
Mhm. Mhm.
We go through stages in our lives. I learned that one piece that the stage is always about your family, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
in your professional career, you go through that it's all about me. It's all about what, and now it's all about why, right? Which is what is your why? And my why truly is that component because I had a wise mentor who would told me one time, if you want to look to corporate marketing to solve your problems, your sales problems, close your doors now because you are one component in a large thing, and your individual needs and the things that you want, you're not going to get. And so
Yeah.
you need to take ownership for the things you can control.
Mhm.
No better experience was that than that third restaurant, right? And
Yeah.
then I saw the power and the impact. Corporate as a brand or any big brand cannot connect with a guest on the
Right.
level that you can connect in your
Mhm.
community. And, when they see the face, and people are like, "Hey, that's a Cece's guy, right?" I mean, back then it was like, "You're the
Yeah.
Cece's guy." "Hey, pizza man," right, on the street, "Hey, what's up?"
Right.
It's from that connection, and then when you watch, generations literally come through your restaurant working for you,
Right.
and that whole piece, and so it was that thing that you can control your destiny. It just
Mhm.
takes time, it takes effort and consistency, but it's the simple things. We're talking right now about daily goals. When you go into
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
store, it's like, "What are your goals today?" And you hear crickets. It's
Yeah.
like, these are the cashiers, and they're like, "Well, I don't know what you mean." I'm like, "Well, are you gonna like, in our business, write meal plans?
Yeah.
How many more meal plan customers are you gonna try and get today?" "Well, I
Right.
guess I hadn't thought about it." Well, let's start thinking about it, right? And setting goals out, and then every day following up. Um, I'm passionate about it because that feeling of failure that I've had,
Mhm.
um, to this day, I get choked I get choked up anyway, but, I'm pretty passionate about things, and I don't want any franchisee to feel like I did.
Yeah.
And so that's my why. That's what drives me, right? Is
Yeah.
I wanna make
Mhm.
franchisees successful, and I can relate to them having walked in those shoes, right? And I think when you establish respect and rapport, it isn't a us versus them. We're doing this
Mhm.
business consulting process now. In the
Mhm.
old days, it's like, well, you have to do this. Why? Because your franchise agreement says so. Right
That's right.
here. Now
Yeah.
do it. Now it's about, hey, here's why you should do that. Well, what? Because it's about your guest. It's not because we want it. It's not
Yeah.
this. It's what your guests want.
Do you think do you think that that has changed over the years, that approach? Did you see it go from, like, a very checklist, "You have to do this," to a more consultative approach?
Yeah, I think, there's so many opportunities now in the franchising world. People can take their hard-earned money and invest it in multiple of different things. And coming in, and mandating and that goes so far. And ultimately, that kind of relationship leads to a us versus them.
Okay. Yeah.
That's not good. In the end, they joined your system. They like your operating system, the tools, and all those things, or they wouldn't have signed.
Right.
But there's also a level of respect that as a franchisee, I always say franchisees have a voice, not a
Mhm.
vote.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
a lot of times I think where franchise systems go wrong is they don't even allow them to have a voice.
Yeah.
And when I go visit folks in the field, I love sitting down with them and letting them vent, right? The first time,
Right.
they get to see me, they're like, oh, this is the guy, he's the COO. Let's vent. They'll throw up all the problems. And I write them down. And I go, "Got it." And I take that piece of paper, I said, "This I take back with me. This is my list to work on.
And that's
Now
their
let's talk
voice,
about."
right?
What's that?
And that's their voice.
Yeah, that's their voice. So I say, "Okay."
Yeah.
And I take that with me. I say, these are my burdens to solve. Now let's talk about what you can do, right?
Mhm.
What you can
Yeah.
affect." Um, and that changes the whole thing to go, "Listen, I'm gonna take all this list back, and I'm gonna go through them. And I'm going to get you an answer. And in some cases, you're going to be happy. And in some cases, you're not going to be happy. And again, voice, not a vote, but at least you've been heard. And I have
Right.
found that in most cases, taking the time, right? Spend a little time, spend a little money, show you care. I mean, people are people. I don't care who they are. And sometimes when you've got everything invested, right? Some of these folks have everything
Yeah.
invested in this, right? Um, I always say at first Thanksgiving, right? There was the Pilgrims, there was the Native Americans, but the only one truly committed was the turkey, right? Well, franchisees are that turkey, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them have all their money in this, and so I take that to heart. And it isn't us versus them, right? This is a collaborative thing to
Mhm.
work through, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's a matter of setting realistic expectations. You
Sure.
know,
Yeah.
used to crack me up. You probably heard the ads, and I won't use the name, but there's a haircut place that says, "Be your own boss, make your own hours, pick your own uniforms." Da, da, da.
Mhm.
And that's the sales pitch. And so they get in there, and day one, the FBC shows up at their shop, and he's there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the franchise owner shows up at 10, going, "Well, what are you doing here?" It's like, "Well, the question is, where have you been?" He goes, "Well, what do you mean? They told me I could
Right.
set my own hours, right?"
That's right. Right. Yeah.
And the FBC says, "That's true, as long as they meet the minimum requirements in your franchise agreement." "Oh, well, nobody showed me that." Okay. Then you go in the door and say, "Well, what are they wearing?" "They can't wear those uniforms." "Well, it said I could pick whatever I wanted." again, true, as long as they are from the list that's inside your
Mhm.
franchise agreement in the FDD, right? So
Mhm.
this is where that rub comes because this
Right,
is what
yeah, and
they
setting
envision,
expectations.
and then you get reality, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the closer those, the what I expected and what it actually turned out to be become closer together, the more successful, you'll be. So
Yeah. Well, and so now you've been with Clean Eats, like you said, 8 or 9 months now, and I think you visited everybody over the course of those 8 or 9 months. Tell me, what are
pretty
the
close.
things
I still got a few I got to get to.
you got a few? Okay. What are the things you're excited about with this brand? With the storied experience that you have, certainly you've been there, done it all. And so as you continue really fueling your own why, as you mentioned, what gets you excited about being at Clean Eats at this point in time?
There's a long list, but I'm going to start with first and foremost is a belief in the integrity in the owners.
Mhm.
You know, I've been a part of brands where less than people with less integrity are in charge. That doesn't sit well with me. So
Right.
I'm excited the fact that Don and Yvonne are still as passionate today as they were when they started this thing. What 10 years ago?
Mhm.
When they started franchising. So that's exciting. I think number two is that we are such a young brand. I mean, we've got
Mhm.
115 locations across the country, and there's just so much more out there in terms of territory and things. And just the more we grow, right, the more happy things can happen, right? Better things can happen.
Mhm.
And so excited about that. I also love the fact that there's so much we can help teach and make our franchisees better.
Mhm.
You know, sometimes you look at models and you go, okay, well, how did that restaurant fail? Well, it wasn't executed as designed. And that's one of the things where people get crossways. They start looking at, hey, I'll just take the money and allowing franchisees to go their own way, if you will, right? Each store, there's a certain level. I think maybe unless you're Chick-fil-A, who just seems everything they touch turns to gold. But
Right.
every concept has a model it's designed to be successful in. This kind of labor, this kind of food cost, this
Mhm.
kind of debt service, this kind of rent and occupancy. And when you start betraying those what would you call it? In the essence of making money, that's a
Right.
bad deal, right?
Or in the pursuit of, like, I think I know better, right? Because
Right.
sometimes what
Yeah.
happens is people are like, "Well, no, I'll go out of these parameters because," like you experienced with your 3rd location, right? "Everybody's telling me that this is going to be amazing."
Yep.
And it's like, "Okay, but are you gonna go with what people think or what is proven?" And
Yep.
so that I think that you're doing a great job of kind of communicating around how are we setting expectations? How are we aligning expectations with reality? And then the reality of how does this business model work and
Yeah.
how is it supposed to work?
I think the other component too is, uh, you know, there is this moment, and what I love is taking people out of what I call this morass, right? Where they have just allowed themselves into this world or this cocoon of defeatedness. I call it like Eeyore, right? It's my store.
Mhm.
It's an ugly store, but it's my store, right? And you kind of go, gosh almighty, you know what? Tell you what, and this is that whole thing, right? Where it's going, people go, "Well, my sales suck and this sucks, I'm gonna be," and you go, "Okay, well then let's just close the doors right now." And they go, "Well, no, that's not what I'm saying." I'm like, "No, that is what you're saying."
That's what you just
And
said,
I
yeah.
said, "So,
Right.
if that's where we're going, let's save ourselves the trouble and we'll just move on." And most times that kind of becomes that wake up call. It goes, well, no, that's not what I'm saying. All right, great. I'm glad you're not saying that. Now let's talk about the four revenue streams that we have here at Clean Eats. And then it's funny, we've broken down our goals this year into edible bites because when you
Mhm.
say I want to raise my sales $50,000, right? So
Mhm.
$1 million restaurant, and I got to raise my revenue $50,000, you know, and you go, $50,000. Gosh, whoo, seems like a big number. And here, when we break it down between our meal plans, our catering,
Mhm.
our grab and go guests, and our cafe, our restaurant guests, it's a simple formula of 4, 6, 14, and
Mhm.
200. What I
Well, and it
mean
goes
by
back
that
to
is,
the goals, right? And
yes,
having
the
a goal,
goals.
and if you
If
don't
you
have
can
a
get four
goal.
more
Yeah.
people, right, a
Mhm.
week to order meal plans, or 6 more grab and go guests come in, or 2 more cafe guests, you can get to $50,000. I'm like, man, all I need is 2 more people to come in my door for the cafe. I'll get one of those shepherd's hooks and just start yanking
Mhm.
them in off the street, you know?
Yeah,
But putting things in edible bites for franchisees, because I think they look sometimes and go, I'm tired. I'm worn out already.
right.
I've tried that. That's the other thing. That is the killer. Those are the 3 words that are absolute killers for me. It's like, I tried that, you know, great. How'd you try it? What tools did you use? Did you go with the right tools? Did you go to the right source? Did you go to the right target audience? There's
Mhm.
so many things, and it's like, I tried that.
Absolutely.
Okay, right? That's that
Yeah.
defeatist mentality.
Well,
Um,
and I think that again you're touching on a couple of things, right? And one thing that is interesting in franchising is that as if you are not in a franchise as a small business owner, it's up to you to set your own goals and it's up to you to then set the path to achieve those goals. And one of the great things about being part of a franchise is that you are constantly challenged because the brand wants to be constantly growing. And so you're challenged in a way to take ownership of what you can do to move the sales of your location. And really what you're talking about is, setting expectations, but then setting expectations of how you expect your owners to act
yeah,
and set goals for themselves and hold themselves to accountable to what they can control. And it's not about the checklists and the big, initiatives that corporate is coming out with, but it's you are an owner of this business. I expect you to act like an owner of this business and control your controllables.
yeah. I, you know, I was fat, dumb, and happy. My 3rd restaurant after I got that store back up and everything was good. It wasn't until I went and took over the franchise group in Colorado that I really realized how bad a franchisee I really was. You know,
Say
I
more
mean,
about that.
what's that?
Said say more about that.
Yeah. Well, I was sitting there and I had my flower or my Louisville store, which was the cash cow. My Carrollton restaurant was a pretty good store, and all said and done, I was living the good life now, right? I'd salvaged the Flower Mound store, had this, and was like, okay. Had meetings every now and again, but basically was in there, shaking hands, kissing babies when I
Yeah.
needed to, and other than that, not challenging anybody or anything. Honestly, just the constant state of malaise, right?
Mhm.
Then I take over the group out in, Colorado, and these are 2 former Pepsi guys. One's a Johns Hopkins educated in finance, and the other guy's Georgia Bulldog, who's been a mentor in my life, and they said, "Okay, time to put our annual plan together." I was like, "Annual plan? What?" So I put this 4-page document together, and Pat goes through it, he goes, "This is a good start." And I was thinking, "Good start? That was the whole thing," right? And then I'm like, "Oh my gosh, okay, this is truly going back by period." And we did the
Mhm.
13-4, right? So 13 4-week periods by restaurant, by the when we say we're gonna increase sales 5%, what's the 5% coming from? What are the
Mhm.
revenue streams? How are you gonna break it down? What assets do you need? Racking, stacking all of our employees, where do we have upgrades? And by the time it's
Mhm.
done, it's basically what we are doing with franchisees now in the
Yeah.
franchise business consulting mode, but putting together and then setting goals and holding yourself accountable to that.
Mhm.
And I went back then to the stores in, because I still own the ones in Texas, and was like, okay, new day, new dawn, right?
Yeah.
And same thing. Here's the goals for this year. Here's the things we're going to set. Here's the processes. We're going to do period business reviews. I realized how bad I was as a franchisee, you
Well,
know?
but you leveled up, right? You had
Yeah.
mentors that helped you level up.
Yep.
And now, like you've said, because you've seen that you can level up, even when you're fat and happy and things are going great, there's always room to improve. And so now you are that mentor and training your team to be that mentor to franchisees, right? And teaching them how to level up.
Well, and if you are, what's it, they call it the lifestyle ceiling, right? If you've hit your lifestyle ceiling where you're quite happy, okay, nothing wrong with that, you know. But then when margins decrease or things
Yeah.
get tough, don't look for somebody else to blame, right? Look around, and see your boat and your leather furniture and your 3
Well, look,
cars for 2 people, right?
I think that's a great point though too in the restaurant industry because that's a very real comment of margins have been squeezed in a way in the last 6 years, more so than we've seen in the last 10.
Yep.
And so, this industry is tough. It goes up and down. There's peaks and valleys. And I would say that the restaurant industry right now is in a bit of a valley. We don't
Yep.
know how and what next year is even going to look like because every year has been so different. And so,
Yep.
tell me about your approach to that and your approach to kind of, yeah, this industry is a tough industry. How are you inspiring the Clean Eats franchisees around, okay, but we have a good system and we have a good concept that can really weather this storm?
Yeah. I had a discussion with a franchisee, gosh, Friday night. Anyway, long-term person and, was kind of nervous about, us, meaning Clean Eats.
Mhm.
But he's really nervous about the industry. I mean, you look at this year, I saw some earnings reports for some of the big players, names that you wouldn't think in any way, shape, or form were based on when you go in their restaurants that they're
Mhm.
hurting. But literally double digit down in terms of dividend growth and
Mhm.
in sales. And these are historically the barometers for our industry, right? And so explaining to them, one, putting them at ease that says, listen, sadly, we're not alone, but gladly, we're not alone. And one of the advantages we have is Clean Eats truly was found. I'll never forget, there was a quote in QSR magazine that said, Clean Eats' unique community driven approach sets them apart from other larger brands.
Mhm.
I've held on to that because it goes right back to my PTC, right? My whole
Right.
preachers, teachers, coaches, the community piece. Um, because we are the face of the franchise. Many places, the face is Colonel Sanders, the face is some goofy redheaded clown, right? Um, and yet, and so you go in there, and those are transactional experiences.
Right.
Clean Eats is transformational. I mean, our name says, we in our thing, we change lives. We
Yep.
have story after story of people that came in large and left small, right?
Mhm.
After 6 months of sticking with the program and committing to changing their lives, story after story. That's the other thing that's beautiful. We truly, live what our motto is, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And to hear those stories is just what's really exciting. So taking franchisees back to their why, that's a thing you hear a lot around here
Mhm.
is what's
Mhm.
your why? You know? And for all of us, every morning you wake up and you should say, what's your why? Why did you get up today? What is it what drive you, right? Reminding franchisees here of what their why was and then getting revitalized around it. I mean, I'm a pretty frank person that says, if you're tired, if you're done, great. Let's sell,
Yeah.
get somebody in here, have them
Right.
take it, and move on. It's the next generation, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's not a bad thing, you know?
It's not. Yeah. And nothing is permanent, right? Everything is temporary. And so recognizing, are we ready to roll up our sleeves and move through what is going to be a challenging time for the restaurant industry? And if not, that is okay, right? Because there is somebody behind you ready to take up that mantle.
Well, it's funny after COVID, it was such a weird There's just a weird dynamic, right?
Mhm.
And when that came at first, everybody's, "Oh my gosh," and, a lot of businesses I was at Skyline at the time, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, we are so much about the experience in our dining room,"
Yeah.
that we thought, "This is the kiss of death." We had one of the best years we've ever had and realized that people were willing to wait literally in a half-mile long line to get their cheese conies and their three ways, right? And it
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, this is a whole pivot point, right, for us." Along the way, right, everybody took the opportunity to raise prices because all the supplies because of hell, remember how much I'm sorry, right,
Right.
we're out of, right?
Mhm.
Because people weren't in factories being able to manufacture this stuff, and the demand was
Mhm.
still there.
Right.
So prices went higher. And the thing that is I've never seen in mass the restaurant business, once they get pricing, ever go back away from
Nope.
it, right?
That's right.
And it is this hard component because prices for products are still high.
Mhm.
I do think, right, as you see gas prices and things coming down, there is a brighter future ahead relative to the cost of goods,
Mhm.
and our prices will stay where they're at, like all brands, and so that margin will be restored to
Mhm.
where it was.
Yeah.
Smart brands, right, hire great people.
Mhm.
And I mean that in terms of franchisees. right?
Mhm.
You go out there and you support them and commit to them and help them take charge of their own destiny,
Mhm.
because I do think there's way too many people, not just here in my experience, that look to corporate to solve their problems. And they
Mhm.
say, I pay you a royalty for your support. And if you read your FDD, no, you don't. You pay your
Mhm.
royalty for the right to hang a sign on your front door.
That's right.
We will provide support as we deem necessary. We don't have to have support. We don't have to do any of it. Think about that frightening statement that you signed that document that says, yep, you bought our system and good luck. I mean, that's
Mhm.
basically the
Yeah.
approach franchisors could take. I'm glad they don't, because that's where I get the best drive, is being out
Right.
there, right, and meeting and working alongside folks. So, but I think there are better days ahead. I'm a
Yeah.
glasses half full kind of person.
Well, and so would you say that that's the mindset shift that you want franchisees to take away from their interactions with you is, "Hey, we can do this and let's put a positive spin here?"
I don't know if you've seen the final finale of Landman. Have you seen that?
No, not yet.
At the very end, there's this great thing where he talks about, she comes up, his wife, and if you know her, and the character is very much self-centered, right? And she's talking about problems. And the gist of it is, he goes, honey, I don't look at the problems. I'm focused on the solution. Right.
Mhm.
And it was such a great line. I mean, I took that and I was like going, gosh almighty, I wish I could be as smart, as Billy Bob Thornton is on that show. Because he just got the right answer. And that's where I think is for people, to quit focusing. I have a saying with my folks when they do, I say, if you're going to throw a sock in the punch bowl, bring a ladle. It's okay to point out problem. It's okay to know where they're in fact, it's a blessing in my mind. If you know where the problem lies, that's 75% of the game.
Sure. Yeah.
It's the other 25%, which is coming up with the solution. But most times people sit here going, man, my sales are down. This is wrong. This is, I wonder why. I don't understand. And when you find out what the root cause of that is, man, yeah, that's a blessing, right?
Mhm.
So, but it's sometimes hard. I mean, you think about it. If you're personal and you love your restaurant, right? When someone comes in and says, hey, your threshold on your door frame is dirty, you've basically told me I'm dirty as an owner,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? It's personal. You know, this is my baby. Hey, your kid's ugly. Sorry, hate to tell you, but your kid's ugly. And once you get past that personal component and go, it's not my opinion, it's your guest's opinion,
That's right. Yeah.
and that's where I think that mindset change is the fact that when you take it out of the personal and realize that every decision you are making should be based on what it is important to your guests, right? So we had funny, well, as part of this, we do the customer experience review as part of our consults. And one of the franchisees, this is a new process. He called up Don, the owner, and said, "Man, Aaron took off for dirt on my windowsills on the outside of my store." And Don goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Don, it's November in Ohio." And Don goes, "Yeah." And he said, and then he took off for gum on the sidewalk. And Don's like, he said, "Gum, one piece of gum stuck on the sidewalk." Don started laughing. And he said, and then he took off for the threshold. And it's like, yo, your standards are, you're crazy. And it's like, first of all, not our standards, right? It's our
Right.
guest standards,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
And individually, dust on the windowsills, not a big deal. One piece of gum on the sidewalk, not a big deal. Dirty threshold, individually, not a big deal. Collectively, they start forming an opinion about your restaurant. And that truly is the definition of marketing. Anything that leaves an impression with your guests about the brand is marketing. And
Mhm.
so many people think marketing is television and radio, right? It's not. And in our stores, a lot of people like to look to marketing departments at corporate to solve the problems when realizing that the best impression you can make
Mhm.
is right there in your store.
Yeah.
And it starts with clean windowsills, no gum on the sidewalk, clean thresholds, great greeting, clean uniforms, right? All that and great food is going to bring them back. So
Yeah.
it's always that
Mhm.
component that says,
Right.
that is operational marketing, right?
Mhm.
And that's what we own when you're in the operational field.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Quinn, this was so much fun to get to know you, to get to know the passion that you're bringing to Clean Eats. I've seen firsthand the excitement that the franchisees have with you on board. So I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you. It's great, great fun.
If you're a franchise leader looking for a better way to share best practices, reinforce culture, and make important messages actually stick, internal podcasting can help. To learn more about how my podcast host brings these conversations to life, visit mypodcasthost.com. I'm Catherine LeBlanc. Thanks for listening.